excited.
Got it.
Got it. We're really excited to be offering this new program come September called Peers, and this is all about social skills training. So as we all know at EA, our goal is to help our students unlock potential through growing their brain's capacities. But also, as we know, part of being a well-rounded individual isn't just about having the tools and capacity to complete a task, but also how to engage with the world around us and how to really generalize those skills in a real life setting. And this is where Peers comes in.
So PEERS is an acronym for Program for the Education and Enrichment of Relational Skill, and it is the first evidence-based social skill treatment that was developed out of UCLA by Dr. Laugustin, and they've been at it for over a decade doing this specific treatment for social skills, and they've had a lot of research and findings about it, and they're always continuously updating the program and changing things around, what works, what does not work. But mainly it is to teach only ecologically valid social skills. So ecologically valid social skills is just a really fancy word of describing social skills that are employed by socially successful people. So we all have some degree of social skills, whether or not it is relevant to the current times or it is going to bring you social success really depends on the setting. And what's socially successful today may not have been the case 50 years ago. So that's what we mean by ecologically valid social skills to the current time. And what's important about this is that Peers is not a program or a platform where our participants will come and make friends. The purpose of Peers is not for the students to make friends within the group, but rather to learn about the skills and the rules and steps, practice it with their fellow peers members, and then take those skills and apply it into their daily lives outside so that they can make friends in their daily circles, be it in person or online. All right. And who is Peers for? Well, Peers is a program geared towards intrinsically motivated individuals diagnosed on the autism spectrum disorder or other social disorder. And the key thing here being intrinsically motivated is that the Peers program is a very intensive program in the sense that there are weekly assignments that students will have to do, and that caregiver and parent or guardian support must be provided to support them through those assignments. And that's why it's not going to work if they get bribed into the program, because if they're bribed into it, they're not motivated and they get tasked with all these very challenging tasks and steps that they must do outside of the program. And that's where the intrinsic motivation is key to being successful in the program. And unlike Aerosmith exercises that only happen during class time, Peers, again, is a program where they learn the skills, practice it in class, and they take it and apply it during their own personal time. So in a way, Peers is there to help amplify the skills that they've attained during R-Think or phrases or clocks or L-Think, so that those skills gets amplified and applied in real time in their personal life. And that being said, there is an entrance criteria for the group composition. So it's not that your child is not fit for Peers, it's probably the student's not fit for Peers for this time around or this time of the year because of the group composition. So we take a look at who's available, who wants to do it, and we make a call based on what's the best fit for this group of specific students. And we want to capture students who are generally within the same capacity range so that they have, again, their peers in class to practice those skills with, because it would be not helpful if they're not able to practice those skills with their peers. It's different when they practice those skills with a teacher versus their own peers before they take those skills and apply into their real life. And that's what we mean by there's an entrance criteria.
Okay, now why Peers? Why are we adding this? We're so fortunate to have the range of students that we do, and we love offering growth opportunities regardless of diagnosis or individual challenges. And in our EA classes, we get to see our students grow these abilities. However, sometimes we also see that our students can sometimes struggle to take a new skill, and apply it elsewhere. So peers is trying to fill this gap by taking those expanding capacities and showing exactly how to use them with proven social skills. So our students can take things they've been working on, like their active listening, their memory for information, problem solving, processing speeds, and then they can apply them in a really meaningful way through their relationships and friendships.
So again, what an extension of what Bethany is mentioning, what we are doing with the Aerosmith program and the measurable outcomes are associated with the Aerosmith program is, generally speaking, when students are working on RThink, we see an increase in their sense of happiness and well-being, the ability to focus and control. And theory of mind is this idea where they're able to do perspective taking, increase in their EQ, overall mood. All of these things are impacting their own personal social life and their own mental health. And what peers does is that we can then take that and amplify it and make it much more relatable and significant in their daily lives. Again, peers is a program that's available through other channels and other societies and through UCLA themselves. But what's different about doing peers with Aerosmith is that we understand your child to their cognitive capacity, to what they're functioning at. And we have a better sense of whether or not, hey, peers is right for them right now, or you know what, they need a little bit more time on RThink and phrases and LThink first before they're ready for peers. And we'd be able to gauge that and tell you that very truthfully. And with that, it's like Aerosmith and peers working in tandem to improve their social skills.
So we're going to get a little bit more into what the program tackles. So peers target social skills based on social challenges typically faced by neurodivergent youth and adults. So let's just go through some of these challenges and what they might look like. Poor social communication. This may be an inappropriate greeting. We kind of take for granted that we know how to greet a good friend versus maybe somebody with seniority or a doctor in a doctor's office. We know to pick the right greeting for the right setting. Somebody with a neurodivergency might not necessarily know the appropriate way to greet somebody. This goes into poor social awareness, not really knowing the right behavior for the setting, maybe telling an inappropriate joke to the wrong audience. And this also leads into difficulty interpreting social cues, not really knowing how to adjust a conversation topic based on reaction. Maybe you say something and it really doesn't land, and there are facial expressions around you giving you that hint, but you don't really know how to interpret that and change or pivot your conversation as a result. And this can lead to less social engagement, because you can experience difficulty in these social settings and understanding maybe that you're fumbling a little bit socially, tend to retreat. Inappropriate peer entry attempts. This can look like, rather than approaching a conversation, listening to the topic and coming up with a relevant contribution, you might just enter a conversation and say something quite off topic, or join the current topic, but really abruptly, maybe interrupting and kind of interrupting the natural flow. This can lead to poor social recognition, where others might, realize these social challenges, making conversations really hard and perhaps not seeking you out for socializing, and which can lead to few reciprocal friendships. So the inability to connect meaningfully can make someone feel really, really isolated. And if an individual is unable to improve their social skills and, retreat into themselves as a result, there can be some really severe consequences. Then they can look anywhere from depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, all the way to, suicidal ideation and total peer rejection and social isolation. And also when we look, these are severe on their own, but also when we look at these consequences from the lens of cognitive growth through our EA work, a lack of socialization also prevents our students from truly experiencing the impact of their hard work and brain changes. On the flip side, having a good friend can be truly life-changing. Some of the benefits of friendship can include, better and adjusted in life with the right support system. We can kind of roll with the punches a little bit, right? It can lessen the impact of stressful life events. We all know how much we need that village when times get tough. That support network is absolutely crucial. Because of this, friendship correlates positively with self-esteem and independence, and negatively with depression and anxiety. And our friendships are also known to protect against victimization. This is so crucial for, a neurodivergent, as, they might be vulnerable in social situations because they're not getting all of the clues that we might otherwise pick up on.
So a little bit about the peers process. Again, as mentioned earlier, peers really focuses on those ecologically valid social skills to our current day and time. So the do's of making friends, and then also making them aware of what the don'ts are. So the common mistakes or errors are committed by people who are not as socially savvy. And then we create rules around them so that they know the difference between do's and don'ts. And we take it a step further by breaking things down to concrete parts and steps where they can follow. And then they practice it in class. And then they take those skills and apply it elsewhere. So again, as mentioned earlier, like those ecologically valid social skills are so important because they're always changing with time. Like there were many times I probably am guilty of that myself in the past when I first started teaching. When I see a student who's struggling to make friends, I tell them like, hey, bud, it's okay. Just walk up to that group and introduce yourself. But in reality, if a 14 or 15-year-old walks up to a random group of 14 or 15-year-old and hold out their hand and say, hi, my name is Estellise. Nice to meet you. That's going to bring about some funny thoughts on the receiving end, and that group's going to have funny thoughts about me. So that would be an example of the don'ts. Whereas we tell them, we break it down like, hey, if you're interested in joining that group, what you do is apply those R-think skills and apply those phrases skills and L-think skills, and take a step aside and observe what they're doing. If you're hearing and noticing that they're talking about, let's say, what they're going to have for dinner, or discussing like this sushi, and this group likes sushi, you can then dig into your personal bank of information related to sushi and join the conversation appropriately by pretending to walk past them and go like, hey, I hear you guys talking about sushi. Have you guys heard about this sushi joint that's down the street? Have you tried that? Like, that's a more natural lead into a conversation. And that will eventually lead to like, oh yeah, by the way, my name is Estellise. You guys from around here? Oh yeah, I'm new to this place. And then it leads to more natural conversations and more likely to blossom into a friendship that is going to be reciprocal and repeated. So then that's what we talk about in class. And then the good thing about it is with the peers program, the parent or guardian caregiver are also show these skills and taught these skills, so they can help these students transitioning it through their real life and practice it outside of class time during the homework portion of their weekly peers program. So some common topics are discussed between the young adults and adolescent modules are choosing and finding good friends, because while we would love to find friends, it's important to identify where to find those good friends. And for adults, it's finding those good romantic partners or people that are compatible with you. And how do you identify that? How do you go about doing that? And more importantly, in general, like, how do you start and enter and exit a conversation? Because what do we do now? We're part of this conversation about sushi. Now I'm bored. I want to exit. I can't just, pretend to be like that scene from The Simpsons where Homer just steps back into the bush and the bush slowly covers him up. That's not a good way to exit conversations. So we teach them how to exit conversations appropriately, and more or less so in the last few years with the current global situation. Like, how do you handle electronic communication? How do you do it properly? And then appropriate use of humor, how to have get-togethers, because the key thing here is so that they can be self-sufficient in their social life. And I'm sure like some parents, even myself, are like setting up play dates for a child on the weekend. And that's us doing the legwork, us making those connections with the other person, setting up the time and place. We're not going to be able to do that for them the entire life. So we want them to learn those skills so that they can be the ones actively setting up those get-togethers, planning out the specifics with their peers. So that's what I mean by get-togethers and how it's different from play dates. And on top of that, it's good sportsmanship and dating etiquettes for the adults. And while we have the good about friendships, we also have the bad and ugly. So in tandem to that is, how do you handle arguments? How do you change a bad reputation when people have funny thoughts about you and they pegged you a certain way? How do you go about changing that? And then more importantly, how do you handle direct bullying, like physical teasing? How do you handle embarrassing feedback? And how do you do it in person and online? Because a lot of our world today is not just about in-person interaction. It's also about how do you interact with others online. And we know how crippling online bullying can be for our population.
Okay, so some practical information around it now that we've learned a bit about the program. When is it going to be happening? Peers is going to be running on Fridays. This way we can avoid any kind of conflict with our cognitive classes. It's going to be its own thing. It will run for 15 weeks, so approximately September to January, and classes are 90 minutes long with the homework component. And I know Estellise has said it already, but I'm going to say it again, that the homework component is so crucial, because it's one thing to practice skills, within the classroom with the peers, but it's a totally different thing to go outside and put it into practice with real life connections. So it's really important that the students that are in the class are aware that they're going to have to take these assignments and do them on their own time. And parent support, again, is really crucial for that reason. We're going to be providing you some weekly homework support videos to help provide guidance so that you can be there to help without being the one that actually has to do the organizing. One thing to keep in mind is that there aren't going to be makeup classes. Our students must attend class. If one class is missed, we're going to do our best to cover material and get you the homework assignment, but it is pretty critical that everybody does their best to make each class. And it also kind of ties into that social responsibility piece. We're all in it together. We're working on this together, so we all need to show up.
And on to the fun part. So a little bit more background onto how robust and thorough Pierce is. That's been studied in universities, not just in North America, but also around the world. Pierce is a program that's not just available in English. There's materials for it in other languages as well. So you can tell just from that how robust and well looked into program that is. So some fancy terms to go through. On the top right over here, top left over here is the SSIS inventory. So that's the social skills improvement system. And the social skills improvement system is a measure that measures social skills, problem behaviors, and academic competencies. And through that, we can see that in the control group, where students who they've never had exposure to peers, the control group in terms of their overall social skills is measured down below 2, whereas for the peers group, after they've done peers, their overall social skills improved significantly. And then on to the right of that is the frequency of get-togethers. Now, again, the importance about defining get-togethers is that get-togethers are meetings where the students themselves are reaching out to the other peer and setting up what they're doing, where they're doing, and all of those detail and working through all of that. So before that, they were barely having any. And after peers, they are having about 4 to 5 get-togethers a month. That means they're setting up a meetup with their friends once a weekend. And that is significant in terms of social life and social skills. And then the other one is the SRS, so that's a social responsiveness scale. And that's the scale that is to measure the various dimensions of interpersonal behavior, communication, repetitive and stereotypical behaviors associated with those on the autism spectrum. And in terms of their social responsiveness, it's gone up significantly too, compared from the control group and the peers group. And the task is an in-house peers assessment that assesses their overall social skills knowledge and how well they're applying it. So again, before peers, they were down here, and after peers, you can see like 3 to 4 folds of increase in terms of improvement on those measures. And a lot of this brings about the question of, well, our world has changed a lot since the pandemic in 2019. And before that, peers ran over a decade in person. And after that, it had to be delivered online to meet the needs of what's happening around the world. So there's actually preliminary research into the difference between the in-person versus the telehealth delivery and the effectiveness of it. So just a quick, all 4 graphs, you use the same color scheme where the in-person measure is done in the yellow and the telehealth measure is shown in the tealish Tiffany blue color. And here in the one that is the social skills inventory, and we're looking specifically at those problem behaviors where before peers program, they're at the above average in terms of the amount of troublesome or problematic behaviors they're having. And compared to post, it's closer to the average. That means like they're having just the same amount of problem behaviors as you would out of a neurotypical teenager dealing with all the whole soup of hormones that's flowing through their body. So you can see an improvement in their ability to handle problems and have less behaviors in both the in-person model and the telehealth model. You can see an increase in their ability to handle and address those issues. And the social responsiveness scale, and you're measuring their abilities. And again, in the teal is the telehealth, and in the yellow, it's the blue. And the main thing to notice here across all 4 graphs between the pre and post is that it's a pretty well-matched graph. It's a pretty well-matched graph that shows that the effectiveness of in-person versus telehealth delivery is just about the same. We're not losing out, we're not gaining more. It's just about the same, the effectiveness. Another thing that we like to look at is also, why are we bringing in specifically peers and not any other program in tandem to support the Aerosmith cognitive abilities over here is the follow-up, because a lot of times students will do well when they're in the program itself or going through the therapy, and then we see a dip in their overall skills as soon as therapy is over. So in here, there are some samples scale of what happens in the 1 to 5 year follow-up. And this study has been done and replicated many times over. And the specific one that I'm quoting, although it's a decades old, but recent data is showing exactly pretty much the same thing in their 1 to 5th year follow-up, is that it's still continuing to improve. So for example, the blue here is before peers. The red here is during immediately after peers. And the green here is about 1 to 5 years after the peers program. And if you look at their raw scores on the social responsiveness test, where it's continuing to improve their ability to cooperate, their ability to assert themselves in group situations, their ability to empathize with others, self-control, internalizing issues and problems took a little bit of dip, but we all struggle with that. And then all of these is showing that the improvement from peers does not stop immediately after the treatment. It continues on into years after. And again, if we look at the graph on the bottom, where I have to point out the scale is actually reversed. So severe is up top and normal is below. So the closer they get to the bottom, the better. So again, before peers, social awareness is in the blue. It's pretty high up there. And then right after peers, it's there. But look at this. 1 to 5 years after peers, the progress continues. It does not stop at the end of peers. And it's across the board for social cognition, their social communication, social motivation, and overall autistic mannerism. This is a scale specifically from the subset of students who are on the autism spectrum disorder. So it's just to highlight that in the long-term follow-up studies, the effects of peers last years after the program and the treatment itself. All right, and that's it for our presentation. Registration is open. If you have not received an email regarding that, please follow up with us. And I will stop sharing.
Yeah, thanks everybody listening to us ramble.
You have any questions?